Alright, so welcome everyone. Welcome to the Tiny Tots Coordinators workshop for 2019-20. For those that don't know me, I'm Stephen Roddy, the Programs and Events Manager. I'm here with Rick Baldock from Ashburn SA, he's a Professional Learning Officer. We obviously welcome you here today, and we look forward to your involvement and obviously learning and preparing for the Tiny Tots this upcoming season. Now, just a bit of our details. So if you want to get in touch with us at all throughout the year, there are our details. We'll have it later on as well. But as I said, we're happy to support you at any stage throughout the season. Obviously, we're only an email or phone call away. So please take down our details if you would like. Bit of an outline of what. I'll keep that one for myself. Work numbers, all right. Some of you are special enough to have it. Workshop outlines, so just a bit of an idea of what today is going to entail. You do have the agenda with you. If you haven't got one, you can just grab it on the table. But perhaps what we're looking to do is we're going to do a practical demonstration straight up. We're going to have one of our very professional and experienced Tiny Tots coordinators, Rachel from Weston's, going to be running a demonstration for session 1. So we're going to pretty much get straight into it first. Rick will explain a bit more about that a little bit after. But we also got another one a bit later on with, again, another experienced Tiny Tots coordinator in Amy from Golden Grove. So we're very thankful for them both to give up their time to do some demonstrations for us today. So hopefully get a bit out of that. We will go through about the things to say and our values, and also explain how the values can be incorporated as part of your program. It's obviously important to teach that to the children at a young age about the different values that we expect from our sports. Also want to acknowledge and pretty much advise how important the Tiny Tots is from a very, very young age in getting them engaged early and obviously wanting to continue with the sport for a long time. So we want to go through that. We've done it before in the past, but it's important to reiterate that again. We want to make sure you understand your role as a Tiny Tots coordinator, so what we expect of you and what you expect of the children and how that's going to work. So it's very, you might just think that you just turn up and you run the session. There's a bit more to that, and it's very important to understand that from a club point of view and from your role point of view. We also, for those from last year, know there's a position description that was created that can be used. It's still obviously available. We want to go a bit beyond that, so showing what's a bit more than just what it says on paper, what you can do to be able to make the program go from here up to here. We obviously reiterate the importance of active parent involvement, and then go through a bit of the resource at the end just to give you a bit of a rundown about it. So that's the outline. As I said, Rick will just do you a brief overview about what the practical session is going to entail. Then we're pretty much going to get up and go outside.
Thanks, Steve. First of all, welcome and thank you for coming on a Saturday afternoon. I know that there are a whole lot of other things you could be doing on a Saturday afternoon, but I want to thank you for taking the time to do this and to improve the quality of what we do in our sessions with the kids. And I'm thanking you and Steve's thanking you because sometimes the kids forget to thank you and the parents forget to thank you because they're pretty busy too. In this practical session, or in both practical sessions, what I want you to do today is, while you're doing the session, have a think about what are you seeing demonstrated that might be you've got some questions about it, like why are they doing that, or oh, I do that, that's really good to know because that's the sort of stuff that I do, so that reinforces what I'm doing. But especially that stuff around where you might have questions, because after we've had this session, what we're going to do is give you time to reflect on what you saw, right? And we'll have Rachel here, of course. You're not going, are you, mate? No. So we'll have Rachel here because there may be specific questions that only Rachel can answer as to why she does that in a certain way. And sometimes things are peculiar to a centre, right? So, you know, the nature of your kids or the parents or even the layout and design or the history of your centre might change some of the things that you might see Rachel or Amy do than what you would do. And that's fine too, all right? So I just want you to have that headset to be reflecting as you're doing, and then we'll give you some time to talk about that when we come back in.
what we're going to be doing for the session. So as a Tiny Tots coordinator, I would obviously speak to children in a very different manner as to what I would speak to adults here. It's a bit awkward pretending that you're children, so I'll do my best. But also we need to consider that if this were a first time meet, a Tiny Tots session, how would you introduce the parents into coming into the session? So I'm going to sort of deliver it like that, and we'll go from there. So firstly, my name is Rachel and I'm your Tiny Tots instructor for tonight. Welcome to the parents as well. We are encouraging everyone to join in as much as possible, and you will also as a parent be dragged in to help your children at different times during the night, so thank you in preparation for that. Children, I just want to set some ground rules first. So when my whistle blows, you need to stop, look and listen. So can I ask you, what do you need to do when I blow my whistle? Stop, look and listen. Very good job. We are skipping the warm up tonight. We're going straight into three activities, with our main focus being on running, changing direction and balancing, and a little bit of throwing today. If you turn your eyes this way, you'll see that there are 4 yellow cones set up in a square, and there are lines that will actually help us keep within inside the boundaries. So if ever I find lines, I tend to gravitate to lines because that helps a little bit stay in a straight. The game that we are going to play is Empty the Bucket. So the goal of this game is for the throwers, whom I will select in a moment. You are going to try and throw the beanbags out of the bucket as quickly as you can. The runners, which will be everyone else, you need to pick the beanbags up off the ground one at a time. You're only allowed to pick one up at a time, and return it back to the bucket. So the competition is that the runners are going to try and fill the bucket, whilst the throwers are going to try and empty the bucket. I'm going to select one thrower here, thank you, and one thrower here, thank you Jenny. So if those people can go next to the black bag there, we're calling that our bucket. Everyone else please, if you could spread yourselves around in the square, I will blow my whistle to start the game.
I think that we're only allowed to throw inside the boundary.
You're only allowed to throw inside the boundaries, which I might make a little bigger, given we've got lots of people.
Are we allowed
One at a time. So
are we allowed to hold some in our hands?
No, select one, throw one. Select one, throw one. And runners, how many are you allowed to get at a time? One at a time. I would actually probably make this square a bit bigger if you had this many Tiny Tots, but I might do that as we're moving. So on my whistle. Has effectively won this game.
Who looks the most worn out?
Who looks the most worn out? Good answer. What else?
Count the bags.
Who has the most bags? So can we see many bags on the ground?
No,
Not really. There's lots of bean bags in the bucket. We're now going to change the rules. This time, throwers, you must throw underarm from a standing position. So you must stand up and throw underarm.
That's strategy.
Okay? Now
No. We're
retrievers,
going to be on our knees.
ordinarily I do this in a few progressions, but we jump in progressions here. Retrievers, you are going to link arms. Can I link arms with you? Okay, you're going to link arms with someone else to pick up a beanbag. Now I can pick one up, and my friend could also pick one up before going to the bucket here. Okay, so retrievers, if you could make a group of 2 or 3, there are odd numbers in the and throwers, you need to stand and underarm throw. Ready? We're going to move straight forward to another game. I picked that game on purpose because I've had a lot of trouble with that game in the past. You can see how it might get a bit dangerous and what have you. So there will be someone caught, and they are going to hold a ball in their hand like this. They're going to hold the ball in their hand. You are to run around in the area and tag someone with the ball. So I can run and tag someone with the ball. You are not allowed to throw the ball at any time, otherwise your snowball will melt. Okay? So you're not allowed to throw your ball at any time. If you throw your ball, you're just going to have a timeout next to me. Okay? I imagine little kids might actually get your ball at times, so it might require a timeout. So you're not allowed to throw the ball, you must tag. If I tag someone, they need to then collect a snowball. So you will get a snowball from the bucket over there. And then you are trying to tag people as well. So it's like chasing. Okay? So let's please remember that we need to stay inside of our square, marked out with yellow and lines. First person that can be caught, is you, and on my whistle, we will begin.
Yeah.
I feel sorry.
That ball back in, well done. If everyone can still keep their ball, keep your ball. Get parents involved if there's lower numbers, okay? Kids love chasing parents. Really good ones to get them involved. We're now going to play this game in reverse. So, what was your name again?
Alex.
Alex is the person caught. He doesn't have a snowball. He's going to tag someone with his hand, okay? And you will then return your snowball back to the bag. So if you don't have one, just grab one quickly. Have you got one? Yep, okay. All right, are we ready?
You're the chaser.
You're the chaser. All right, return your snowball. Competition is on. Like I said, really good game to get the parents involved with that one. And obviously you could have smaller numbers and multiple groups if you wanted to, and lots of progressions that can build that up to that level. I'm actually now going to, we're moving through quite quickly, we're actually going to do some a Tiny Tots dash now. But in preparation for the dash, can I just get everyone to sit down on their books? Just make sure that you stretch your legs out with some space and that you're sitting up nice and tall. You're just going to have our elbows into the side. All I want you to do at the moment is just run your arms forwards and backwards. You can see that our elbows are bent. We're running with bent elbows and our arms are Excellent. And let's have our opposite, our hand forward and opposite hand back. Yep. So when we start our running races, we are going to start with 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. There is no need to stipulate which foot forward, which foot back. Okay? So 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, because you're going to push off your back foot and take off. We want to make sure that we are looking at the finish line. So parents, if we could stand at our finish line, which is just here, your children will run to you down to the finish line. So making sure that our eyes are forward and our chin is up, not looking at our feet. We're going to move across to the track here, and you'll see that there are some blue cones. Can I please get people to line up in each lane in line with those blue cones? Kids won't be able to do that, I don't think, but let's move across.
Yeah, it runs with me.
So just one person in the middle of each lane here, and then let's have another line where these blues are.
If someone want to be some parents, you're more than welcome to as well.
Yeah, if you don't want to run, that's fine. Now parents, don't stand right in the middle of the lane because your children might bowl you down.
I will bow you down no matter what. I'm coming for you.
Alright, so there's a spare lane just up here. Spare lane here. Typically what I do is I say, okay, now you're going to run first, you're going to run, and I just tap them on the shoulder to indicate that you are the first one. Okay? No, that touch children, right? Or click in their face or something. Alright, so first runners, I'm going to say on your mark, and you're going to take position, set, and then I will blow my whistle. Okay, you are running down to your parents as fast as you can down the other end. Something that we just practiced. What was something we just practiced over here?
So the position that we started in.
Position that we started in. What about something else? What else might we have practiced just over here? Not crossing our arms. And where do our eyes look? Forward down to the finish line. Go, Vincent. First group. On your mark. Set. Okay, next line. Come on. And you are now running in the next line. On your mark. Set. And just wait down the other end. Up. On your mark. Set. Walk down to green cone. Walking down to green cone. Make sure you hop off the track to walk back. And lining up where the green cone is in line with the blue line. One person in each lane. I saw some people accidentally go outside of their lane. So you need to remember that you need to stay between the two white lines where you are standing. So stay between the two white lines where you are standing. This run is a little bit longer, so you might need to go a tiny bit slower. When you get to the end, make sure you go through the finish line instead of stopping on the line. First group. Mark, set. On your mark, set. Next group.
It's not always easy to come up and do that stuff. As experienced as you are, I bet you still went, here I go.
Still took my notes tucked in my pants.
Is that right? Yeah. So, you know, there's that stuff about being well prepared, right? You could see she was well prepared. She knew what she was doing. I took a stack of notes about things that Rachel did there, and I'll be interested to see what you say. What we want to do now is reflect on that session, okay? And build on the good practice that Rachel displayed there, okay? So, what I want you to do first of all is just sit there and think for a minute. No talking, just thinking. What did you see? What sort of things? And you might want to reflect on, oh, what was she doing there that I need to do in terms of setting up my season for all the sessions that I'm going to take? What were the sort of things that she did? And she most probably did them half automatically once she got going, right? What were her expectations and how did she express those for the children? And what was her coaching pedagogy? Pedagogy is just a fancy word for the way she coached. What was the way she coached? And finally, was there any progression in the activities or within activities? Did she put in variations? That sort of thing. Finish that off. What I'd like you to do now is just to share with the whole group anything that you reflected on, either with the person next to you or in the small group that you were with. Let's start up the back this time. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really good how Rachel made an effort to set expectations about the group work at the start of the session.
So how did she do that? What did you see her do? Because she was battling to remember what she did.
Just in terms of putting it back on the group and asking them what did I just say kind of thing to engage them as well. It's really useful.
Yeah. So, because she's a full-time teacher, she does all of these sort of things all day long. And she was going, you said at the start, I didn't really set expectations, but you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you laid down the ground rules, you said what's going to happen, how you want it to happen, and then they repeated it back to you.
Well, you actually
So you used to doing that.
she quizzed people
Yeah.
on what they were going to do, not
Tell them.
You told them and then asked the question. So what do you do in this situation to make it clear that they understood, not just asking, do you all understand?
Yeah. Because you'll get an interesting response.
Yeah. The parents will do that too.
They need to comprehend and not just yeah.
I think
Okay.
looking at your review rates, we've done it every year, so you're putting expectations back on the parents to get involved as well. Because a lot of the times we all know, parents will just say, no, this is babysitting.
Yes.
But you laid that down straight up, you know, you're there to help, but also get involved, and I think that's something that has to be spelled out right at the beginning, which you've done.
Yeah, so that's something where she's setting up the whole season with that expectation, right? And it's one of the things, if you ever go to that centre down to Henley Beach and watch her in action, the parents are all involved. And you've got quite a large group some years, don't you? You know, so that's a really clear expectation. And I don't think you have a parent that says no. They just do it now, don't they?
I actually don't give a lot of choice. I tend to say, oh, could you just grab those cones and come over? You know, like I kind of just instruct parents.
I think you did that today as well, even when you said parents standing at the end of the track. So
Yeah, like
it was
doing
kind of
that.
like there's
Like
an
there's no
expectation
choice,
that you
right?
will move from there to there.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not actually would you mind. It
Yeah.
was you're going to run to mum and dad. So all of a sudden that onus is put back on the parent because
Yep.
their child's expecting them to do that. And I think that's the effective part of it even more. Not you necessarily always instructing, but from a child's point of view.
And I think that age group as well, parents know that their 3-year-olds have got a short attention span, so they know that they will keep them in line, especially if you've got attention. I guess that's true.
Catherine made an interesting observation during when we were discussing this point that you made, that sometimes even the instructions don't really make sense to the kids, and you need an actual demonstration.
Yep.
And I suggested that what I've done in the past is I will grab a couple of the parents and get them to do the actions, so that kids can actually see what they're doing.
Yep.
All right, particularly if you've got young ones. When you've got slightly older kids, you can sometimes get one of the ones who've done it before to do it, but when you've got the total newbies, grab the parents.
Yeah, we do that. We do it. Virtually every exercise that you get out there, we'll have the parents do first. So the kids see the parents do it as well, and then it's a bit of funny volley, laughter, and then they go on and get involved.
So in a number of ways, what we're doing here, and what you saw Rachel do, is actually use the parents to become the teacher. Because the kid knows the parents. They don't necessarily know you. And they will respond to the parent. Plus the parent knows their kid the best, far better than you do. So by using them as the proxy teacher, if you like, you know, the kid will react to them. They'll know how to pitch it, what to say, what upsets them, which way not to go, all the things that you could inadvertently put your foot in, right? So by using the parents that way, it's a really useful way to keep the child engaged. Rach?
One, I think where I use this a lot is particularly with throwing events as well. When we have 20 to 30 kids, the instructor can't get to each of those, so I would say, parents, can we just watch that elbow is out, beanbag is on the chin, arm is up, and then they teach their kid. You know, it's not meant to go around and do it.
So Rach, with that, when you said 20 or 30, is that the whole group that they...
If there's only one instructor, yeah. Yeah, 20 to 30. But we've got more.
Oh, you're fantastic. The one thing, just on this, because I did the Oski coordinator and Rachel as well, talked about this, where they graded you into groups. I'm not sure about this last year, but ours are different. We have a circle of exercises, and each of the groups will go to there as well, so that it overcomes, and that's probably from Oski, so they're not waiting, because we know the children, their lost time is nothing to them. So we do that, and each of the parents, so before we do it, we go to the parents and give them a brief of each exercise. We walk them around, so as they move around the group, they understand that it's more just for the flow.
You suggested this last year,
Yeah.
it was a brilliant idea to
Yeah.
set stations, and
Yeah.
we started doing that fair bit
It
as
just
well.
makes it easy, and then you don't get, at the end of the season, when you get the surveys, oh, child's standing around, I had no idea of it. You're gonna say, oh, it becomes a lot of those.
However, as you...
Equipment will
yeah.
take that.
And just the logistics will stop. What space you've got to work with,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's different everywhere.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we transition through it fairly easily with just two of us, right? So that often, it's my daughter and myself, one of us will be running an event, or maybe both of us, and then when we move on to the next one, the other one will be either grab a parent or two to clean up,
Yep.
and set up the subsequent event to keep it rolling that way.
Excellent. That's great. Can I go back to that table up the back again? Because that was really good. You stimulated some. What about some other people up the back there, the younger ones? What did you see? Because you're used to being taught. You're used to being the kid, right? Now you're going to be in a role where you're going to be leading. Was there anything that stood out for you?
Everything was set up before. There was no waiting for everything to get set up during the session.
Yep, well done. So that's really important, to have as much of it set up as you can before. And I've watched Rachel too, when you're working as a pair, sometimes, you know, she'll grab you sometimes, and Rachel's taking a group and saying to you, can you set this up over here, because there was a clash of space or something at the time. So she has an offsider or a parent that she sometimes instructs to do that sort of thing. Great point, thank you. What about over here? Anything over here?
I think the instructions were really clear as well, so there was no umming and ahhing, and
No.
I think we all knew pretty clearly what we needed to do and what was expected of us.
Yep, you left in no doubt. Right, that's good. Anything on this table that you talked about?
It flowed nicely. It was a quick one activity after the other, so they didn't
Do you think the activities built on each other, or were they quite different activities?
built.
Ah, okay.
Well and
Yeah, so there's what we call a progression, right? So you do one activity and that leads nicely into the next activity. They're not just, whoa, we've got to start again and restart again. All right? Anything from this table?
So normally we set up all the events before they all come and we go from one throwing to like a jumping or something, and I really like the progression. Like you've got the same kind of activity going on, but you change it and make it a bit more interesting.
Yes.
I think that was really, really good.
Yeah, what was the activity that you saw Rachel do where she didn't just change it, she reversed it? Right? What did you say to me?
I've been doing that game for quite a few years and I've never seen it done that way before.
Yeah, so even if that's the only thing Adele gets out of today, she's going back with a game variation that she's going to go, oh, I'm going to try that. All right?
We've actually got a third variation. We don't use the tennis balls. We've screwed up pieces of paper, some white and some newspaper. We sticky tape them in balls. And we start with them in a container in the centre, and we've got kids in 2 or 3 teams. And they have to one at a time go in and raid the nest for as many of the snowballs as they can. We then count maybe how many dirty snowballs did your team get? Because they're the newspaper ones, or how many clean ones, or how many did you get overall? Then, early in the season, we have the kids throwing the snowballs at parents. But when they realise that they don't hurt later on, we progress, it just becomes a gentle snowball fight. Right? So it's practicing our throwing skills, but in a totally fun and game-based way.
Yeah, okay. So that's interesting, that term there, using it in a game-based way. I think that that's what's really important here. Kids will play games until the cows come home, right? Okay, there's an old saying. So the more you can make it a game, the better, right? Here's a question. Rachel did some very explicit teaching, didn't she? What did she teach you about? Do you remember?
Running.
Running. And what did she focus on in particular?
Arms and then our stance.
Okay, right. And she had a nice little progression there. Good luck in your netball match, right? Going off to be a goalkeeper, right? What else could you do other than teach that explicitly? Stop the lesson, teach everybody. What else could you do? Is there another way that you could do it? It's not wrong to do it that way, but is there another way that you could do it?
You could let them just have a go and then say to them, what did you notice? How could you have done it? Not better, but how else could you have done it? What would make you go faster? So what Amy's saying there is play the game, stop the game, and then ask some questions and get the children to reflect on it, right?
As Rachel did a couple of times.
She did, she did, right? She asked a number of questions, her questioning. And what can you ask questions about?
What the kids' impression of what went on.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
What worked, what didn't work. And
Okay.
You're going to get a mixture of answers.
So I reckon you can ask technical questions, technique questions. What are your arms doing? Where should they be going? Right? You can ask tactical questions sometimes in a game. How do you go about that? Where's the best place to stand when you're playing that game of chasey or whatever? And sometimes when you need to focus the children's learning, you can ask about their social behaviours, their personal behaviours, if they're not behaving in the way that you want them to do. So you can draw their attention to it. We call that focusing the play. So the questions focus the learner onto what you want them to focus on. And what Amy's suggesting is another way you could do it is play the game. You might think, I need to teach all these things, but you find it's only this group of 3 here that need that information, right? Because you've observed that. So I would just stop and go and work with those 3 and get the rest playing a game, right? Or, you know, if you've got the luxury of 2 people, you say, okay, I'm going to take them, can you supervise the game over here, right? So that allows you to provide what we call in teaching a differentiated approach, right? So children are all different levels. We can't presume that they all don't know something. Sometimes that is the case. But sometimes when you play the game, like Amy was suggesting, we find out that thing that I was going to teach, they all do it. Why would I teach that? Just to reinforce. And that's where you might say, I like this, I saw you do this. Kids, oh, I did that. They sort of stand up a bit taller and walk out a bit taller out of your session, right? Because you're reinforcing what they already know. Okay? That was really good, Russ.
This question, Rick, on Rachel, when she talked about the program and session expectations, what we've done in the past is we've always, every session we start, when the little Tiny Tots arrive for the young person who wants, we give the parents a bit of a brief of what it is. It's not just, haphazardly put this together, it's a proper program, it's part of the cognitive learning, the hand-eye coordination,
Yep.
so we talk about all that to each and every session, because we always get new and others come, so when in the season survey comes on, I just want kids to do competitions, they understand why it's part of it, it's not something we slap dashboard together, and I think that gives them a different understanding of what it's about, so we do that while the kids are doing it.
You make a really good point, and that'll take us to what we're going to talk to a bit later on about the involvement of parents and parents understanding what you're doing. Because what we found in the very first year when we trialled this was one of the big gaps was parents understanding what you were doing. Because some of them come out with an expectation, oh, there's a track, they'll all be running on the track, they'll all be doing long jump. They're 3 to 5 years of age, right? Have you seen your 3-year-olds do long jump? There isn't a lot of jumping going on. They tend to just run straight through and then roll in the sand, right? Okay, right? And the parents, and for the 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, that's normal, right? Okay, so just being in that environment, they'll pick it up, they'll see other things. So, when you're singing songs and doing actions and all of that sort of thing, some parents might look at you and think, that's not athletics, right? But what we're doing is providing the base for their kid to go and participate in a whole lot of activities, a whole lot of sports. And it reminds me, if you're looking for other activities and other games, at AGPA we sell that resource for teachers, but it would be useful for you too. So what we're actually teaching, the fancy term is fundamental movement skills, right? For you, that's running, jumping and throwing, right? So that might be another resource for you, and it's game-based, right? Which is very similar to what we use with a play-based approach with the 3 to 5s in Tiny Tots, all right? If you're working with older athletes, you might want to have a look at that one, right? And that's game-based, but across the 4 game categories, okay? So that one, Play with Purpose, is really interesting too. Is there anything else that people want to share, that they're dying to share with us before we move on?
I'll just say one other thing I really liked that she did was with the running, that they had that opportunity to run for a shorter distance and then for a longer distance. So there was that direct comparison between now I'm going to sprint and now I'm going to take a bit longer to get to the end.
Right.
I thought it gave a really good instant comparison of the 2 different styles.
Yeah, and so that introduction to pacing in a very subtle way, and I think that's one thing that children find hard, most probably until they're about, I'm guessing, 9 or 10. They find it really hard to pace. It's like, it's a race, you just go, and then when you've had it, you stop and you just walk along until somebody says, hey, get going again, right? So, they do find that that's a concept that's most probably developmentally is quite complex for them. Anything else that anybody wants to say? All right, I hope that that's useful to reflect on it. We're going to do the same with Amy's session when she does a practical too. And Amy's totally different again, right? And it's not to say that Amy's right and Rachel's wrong or anything like that. That's that variation, and you're responding to the group. The other thing that Rachel was saying, that most probably wasn't a typical session like you teach with kids. Do you just want to talk about that briefly?
I just think perhaps that when you deliver to children, I think I said it at the start anyway, that it's really different to how you would teach to adults, or you would feel the progressions a lot better with a whole session as opposed to just 3 activities. And you might perhaps give more information, and certainly that jumping in with certain kids to help them on a specific skill, rather than feel like it was just a bit rushed, you know, with what we did. But I'm sure you'll feel the same as you deliver your own sessions anyway.
How long can they always stay engaged?
Well, at Henley, at Western, we sorry.
Slip.
Um,
No, she was
originally-
talking about the venue, not the club.
Originally, it was an hour Tiny Tots session, and we cut it back really straight away, didn't we? And we made it 45. So we do 45, and we do a good 5-minute warm up, cool down, pretty much. So it's probably down to 30, 35 minutes anyway.
Whereas we've tended to go pretty close to the hour, but there are certain days where you realise, no, this is not working,
Yeah,
and you cull it
Yeah.
accordingly.
That is a great point. So
Absolutely.
you're responding to the needs of the children on that day. And some of them, when they get there, like you've got a Friday night session, hey, it's been a long week. They've been at, preschool, they're doing after hours activities and that sort of stuff. And you just take one look at the group and you go, yeah, I've got it cut out tonight, like,
Yeah.
geez, my work's really tough.
And parents will often interject, like, we tend to talk to our parents quite a lot, sort of, and maybe even more on a social basis as well. So if they are also saying, oh God, they're ready tonight, we know that everyone's happy that it's going to be shortened, or, you know.
So we're lucky ours is on Sunday.
Yeah, I like Friday night, I'm not mentioning that Friday night.
Okay, so that ability to adapt the session and change it up is exactly what we want to see, because we've got to be child, or when they grow up, athlete centered. It's no good just saying, well, here's the program, this is what we've got to teach, and come hell or high water, we're getting through this. You'll lose them. It's totally ineffective, especially with 3 to 5 year olds. And they vote with their feet. They do this. They just wander off.
If I can add to that point, Ruth, my daughter, and I will plan out what we're doing that particular week, right?
Yep.
We will have what we're expecting to do. We always make sure we've got a couple of backup plans in case, right?
Good idea.
And then we just go with it. And the other point, Rachel, you said you had your notebook with you.
Yeah, I did.
Right, I'm still old school and I'm a notebook person as well, but of course my daughter's a digital individual, she's got it all on her phone.
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. So to pick up on that point, one of the things that I did, my notes for watching Rachel's session are all on my phone, right? Okay. So like I've got reversing the game as a variation. I wrote that down. Bringing children in to talk with them and set up a new activity. Explicit teaching before a game. And then my question, what else could you do? Could you do it another way? And Amy talked about that. Instead of telling children what to do, what else can you do? You can ask questions. Reinforcing and reminding children of the teaching points. She did that a number of times, didn't she? You'd do something and then there would be a reminder, there would be a reinforcement. And that's what you need, because you can't assume that all kids are listening at the same time. They don't. Right? Not all adults do. Right? Some of you aren't listening to me now, right? Are you? No, that's right. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. That's really useful. I'm glad you got a lot out of that session, and thank you once again, Rach. All right, yeah, a little clap. Okay, what we're going to talk about now is something that we haven't done before, and when Steve and I were preparing for this session, we thought, maybe it's about time we started to look at, well, what the heck is Little Athletics here for? What are we doing, right? And the reason is that we need to be clear about that, so that when you have one of those days where maybe it doesn't go well, or when it is going well, you start to reflect on it. You should be reflecting quite strategically on things like, what's the mission of Little Athletics? What are we here for? What are we really about doing? So there it is. To develop children of all abilities by promoting positive attitudes and a healthy lifestyle through family and community involvement in athletics activities. Does that sound like Tiny Tots? It does, doesn't it? Like the family stuff, we've been talking about parents' involvement, right? About positive attitudes. If the kids aren't with you that night, they're tired, they're restless, cut the session, because they're not going to walk away feeling positive about the session if they're tired and irritable and they don't want to listen, you're trying to make them do something, right? To develop children of all abilities, and you get them, don't you, in your groups. Some kids come with this wonderful array of abilities, and other kids, this is the first time you think that they've been asked to run anywhere or throw something. Okay, so you get that, Russ.
Those first few words, develop children of all abilities, you're talking about what they can and can't do. I think that needs to be stretched out through diversity and inclusion, children with disabilities and that. And one of the things we've done as a club, and Steve knows, we've reached out to groups where the children, we've got some with global development delay issue, we've got some with autism, and we work with them as a group. The children with the global development, we met with the parents, found out what they want, their expectations are, they met as a group. Then we went to the clinicians at the Lyell McEwen who look after that and got information from them. And it's amazing how now we are getting so many different inquiries from children and parents within the community. So it talks about that flows onto the community involvement as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's where Tiny Tots and Little Lads really has, that mission should be just broader a bit more, because I think, we need to encompass every child.
I don't know if it needs to be broader in the mission statement, because I think you understand that, but thank you for highlighting that, because it is a really important part, that inclusive approach to what we do, right? And some of those kids may grow up to be great athletes, right, in whatever they do. All right, let's have a look now at the vision then. For athletics to be the foundation sporting activity of choice for all children between the ages of 3 and 17. So there's that bit about where the foundation upon which they can build their involvement in a whole lot of sport and physical activity. That's a fairly onerous responsibility. There aren't too many other sports that do it. I reckon gymnastics might think that they do it too, right? Because they're that sort of foundation activity, right? But really, you're the springboard into a whole range of sports and activities in the community. So if you can teach kids how to run efficiently, they can use that in a whole range of games and sports, can't they? Right? And they will tell you, I was in little athletics. You listen to some of our best footballers, our best netballers, they always say, oh, I started in little athletics. And that's where I learnt to run. That's where I learnt how to be efficient. And then the reverse is true. I was talking to a coach the other day, bumped into him in a supermarket, and he's telling me about the athletes that he works with from other sports on their sprinting technique, how they can be more explosive, how they can improve, right? And how other sports don't necessarily understand that. They just want those athletes for themselves, right? So there's our mission, there's our vision, and then our philosophies. Fun, family, and fitness. The 3 Fs, all right? So what are the values then of this organisation? What did we find when we went looking for the values?
What did we find?
Yeah.
We found them.
We found them. Because I said to Steve, what are the values of this organisation? And he said, I don't know. Well, let's go looking.
I knew them, but it's just obviously we probably don't share it as much as we probably should. So that's what's obviously it's good that we got it.
Yeah.
Here to display.
Yeah. So we found them. Right. There they are. So excellence, and that means for us as well as Tiny Tots Coordinators, what we do is aim for excellence in what we're trying to do. Integrity. So we say we're going to do something, we do it. Sportsmanship, it's not a very inclusive term, is it? Sportspersonship or whatever you call it, I don't know what you call it these days. Teamwork, respect, and diversity. Isn't it interesting? Teamwork in a predominantly individual sport, and teamwork's up there. I think that's interesting. So the whole time that you're leading a session, you should be thinking about these values. How do you display those? What are you doing with the students that actually demonstrate, or the children that actually demonstrate those values? Right? How do you enact those values? What do they look like? So let's have a look at what else we could do. Another way of looking at this is to use what they do in Canada. There's a thing called True Sport. I quite like these principles. Okay, if you want to go and have a look at it, there's a whole lot of support materials. It's aimed at clubs in Canada across a whole range of sports, right? And I came across this about 10 or 11 years ago. What I like is the language, because it isn't highfalutin language. It's stuff that people can understand pretty easily. So the first one is go for it. We want children to say, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to have a go, if you like. So it says, rise to the challenge. Always strive for excellence. Oh, that's us. Excellence was one of our values. Discover how good you can be. Isn't that a positive statement? Right? The next one, play fair. Play honestly. Obey both the letter and the spirit of the rules. Winning is only meaningful when competition is fair. So if you cheat and win, have you really won? Right? The next one, respect others. Show respect for everyone involved in creating your sporting experience, both on and off the field. Win with dignity and lose with grace. Nick Kyrgios, please. Right? Okay. Keep it fun. Find the joy of your sport. Right? Keep a positive attitude both on and off the field. You're here because you love your sport. And you most probably really like the people in your sport. There are a whole lot of people that you work with on a day, well, most of them, Rach. I saw Rachel look away like, really? No,
that wasn't intentional.
All right. So, you know, keep it fun, especially in Tiny Tots. If it isn't fun, why would they come back? And, you know, some of you are doing that extremely well. I hear the stories about little kids who wake up every morning and the first question to mum or dad is it Tiny Tots today? They have 6 days where the answer is not what they want to hear, right? And on the 7th day, it's like, yes. And the kid runs in and goes and puts the uniform on straight away, right? You would have little tackers like that do that. Stay healthy. Place physical and mental health above all other considerations. Avoid unsafe activities. Respect your body and keep in shape. Include everyone, like Russell's talked about. Share sport with others. Ensure everyone has a place to play. Right? And finally, I love this one. Give back. That's what you're all doing. Right? But let's get explicit about it with other people. Find ways to show your appreciation for the community that supports your sport and helps to make it possible. They're not bad, are they? Right? It's everyday language. Role of Tiny Tots then. Tiny Tots provides opportunities through play to prepare children for more than athletics. So you see the connection there with what we've just been talking about, right? It prepares them to participate in any sport and learn to play with others. Geez, that's important, isn't it? Getting on with other kids. That's socialisation, if you like, right? And here are the 5 things out of this approach that they focus on. So the first is around trust and respect, right? The second is about effort. The third is about being self-directed, right? There's a 4th one that I haven't put up there. It's about caring for others. And then the fifth one, this one about transfer, is what you do all the time. You're working on it constantly. So when you're respecting people, you're not just doing it here at Little Athletics, you're doing it in other parts of your life. So you might ask kids, we talked about this last week, is there anybody that did this in another part of their life? Maybe at school, or maybe in another club, or maybe at home. Because we know if kids can transfer this to other parts of their life, it tells us two things. One, that we're having an effect, and two, that they really have learnt it and understand it. Because the hardest thing to do is to transfer it from one situation to another. Okay? So you might want to reflect on those, especially respect, effort, being self-directed, and you have to be that eventually if you're going to be successful in athletics, don't you? It's nobody telling you to get out of bed and go and train. You got to do it yourself, right?
Athletics, it's life.
Well, that's life, yeah. But there's the metaphor of athletics, isn't it? Right? Being self-directed, caring for others, and then how do you transfer that into other aspects of your life? Right? So just ask you to think about that and reflect on that. So, why is Tiny Tots important to your centre? Well, have a look at this first one. Not many other sports offer a program for 3 to 5 year olds. We're fairly unique. There aren't many others that have that sort of program, especially a state-wide program. And by the way, did you know this is going gradually national, isn't it? Right? Okay, so who picked it up this year? New South Wales?
New South Wales, yeah.
Yep. So it's in, you know, population-wise, the biggest state now. They're picking it up, and it's this program, right? And one place in Victoria, I think.
Yeah, NWA. But
NWA.
Yeah, New South Wales are picking it up from a state point of view. There's a few clubs from the other states, but New South Wales from a state association.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, isn't that nice? We're breaking new ground. Little old South Australia is doing something and initiating something that the other states have been looking over the fence at what Steve's doing and go, when you're ready, we'll have some of that. Right? Okay. I don't know whether you know, but out of all the age groups in Little Athletics, this is now the biggest in numbers. Ooh. So you now are part of the biggest program within Little Athletics. You have more children in your program than any other stage of development in Little Athletics. And like we talked about before, you're the first cab off the rank. For a lot of these kids, you're their first taste of Little Athletics. So it's where they begin their journey. Journey. I hate that word. Oh, geez, everything's a journey, right? Okay. Let's have some fun. It's not a journey. A journey always sounds onerous to me, right? Let's have some fun. It's where they start, right? And then they're really positive about it. They're going to stay with us. It sets the foundations not only for those skills, but for their whole physical development and their social development, their emotional development, and maybe even some of them their cognitive development, because we know with the little tackers, it is so intertwined. The other thing that we've talked about today is what I'd call the spiritual element, the values, the spirit with which you play the sport, the way you participate. That's really important too. And you know, you waxed lyrical about it. That was fantastic. And Tiny Tots is an important group to focus on because of the viability of your centre. It can set your centre up, right? So we've got to, in our centres, invest into this area in terms of the finance and supporting it so that we've got the right equipment. The committees need to dedicate adequate time and planning to the delivery of Tiny Tots. It's now your biggest program. We never set out to do that, it's just happened. And it's happened really quickly. It was just that a few people noticed there are all these little kids hanging around with their older brothers and sisters. Why don't we give them something to do? And now it's grown into this. Okay, so as a Tiny Tots coordinator, have a think about this. Beyond your position description, I want you to think about what are your two main strengths and what is your major challenge in doing Tiny Tots. To think even more about your strengths and your challenges. So, your program, if you're doing it well, will display these sort of features. You'll have confidence and competence to work with 3 to 5 year olds and their parents. This notion of being child-centred, so what somebody said about changing the session on the night because you go, they're all tired, they're grumpy, that's being child-centred, right? Rather than being focused just on the sport, right? Support and passion about the program. I love what I'm doing. I'm going to come here no matter how cold it is, how hot it is, you know, and we're still going to have some fun. Your enthusiasm to promote the benefits of the program to parents and also to your centre's committee, because we don't in every centre have this level of support, right? Don't you wish you did, right? But sometimes you've got to go out and promote that to your centre committee. You've got to sell it to them. You're the expert on this now. You run that, right? Patience and understanding with children and their parents, especially their parents, right? Awareness and understanding of the developmental needs of the child. Understanding that what 3-year-olds can do and what 4-year-olds can do and what 5-year-olds can do. And then the huge variation in that. Just when you think you got it all taped, some 3-year-old comes in with athletic skills that are more like a 6-year-old. Where did that come from, right? Okay. Being sensitive to the needs of the child and their family. I think people have talked about that before too. Being well informed and well planned in each session. And then this one. This is the really tough one. Being open-minded, adaptable and flexible so you can meet the aims of your session. What you're intending kids to learn about, what you want them to do, what you want them to understand, and understanding that you can be flexible in that.
Rick, just on the awareness and understanding of the developmental, what we did, which probably Madison's can do, is I met with a couple of our local directors for the early care centres.
Yep.
And had a chat with them and just got some ideas because they see it on a day-to-day basis. So they were able to give us some feedback and take on board, you know, what we needed to be aware of. Because I mean, we all do it, but we're not educated to pick all that stuff up. So luckily for us, Madison's studying a little bit, so it's going to work out really well. But that was a really good tool for us to go out to our 2 local daycare centres and speak to the directors.
You also did something else that was really important. You did something that people rarely do. You valued them. By doing that and asking them, because they're the experts on little kids in our community. And they're out there, they're called early childhood educators, right? And we don't value our educators enough. So by going and doing that, that would be absolutely unique. Somebody's asking me what I think, wacko, I'll give you this.
And 2 of the early educators, both their children have autism, they joined the program.
Oh jeez, look at that. See, we're a community, aren't we? It's that interactive community. All right, time now for practical session 2 with Amy, all right? So, let's follow Amy outside.
Okay, so very similar to the demonstration before in that I will treat you like children, I do apologise. And the other thing you need to know is this is a session that would happen a few weeks in. So the Tiny Tots have already had a little bit of an experience with both yourselves and also with some of the activities. Okay, so not everything's going to be brand new to them. In saying that though, you may get some new Tiny Tots that join you a little bit later on. So we'll get started. So how are we today, Tiny Tots? Can you wave your arms in the air if you did some sport this week? Can you run on the spot if you went to school? I've got a few little ones today, so we may, smaller ones today, so we may need to split into a few groups, but that's okay. So Tiny Tots, would you like to come and help me get some parachutes out? Tiny Tots are usually really good because they want to come and grab it as quickly as possible. So if you want to be the Tiny Tots and come and grab it, that would be awesome. As quick as the ground for me. And can you pop your legs underneath like you're curling up in bed? Okay, put your hands up if the parachute is light on your legs. Put your hands up if you think it's really, really heavy. Not many of us. Okay, let's stand back up and let's have a bit of a wave in the air. Doing very well, boys. Okay, Tiny Tots, I would like you to hold the parachute with your left. And mums and dads, we might need to help our Tiny Tots with what our left hand is. Then can you wave it for me? Woohoo, well done. Now, Tiny Tots, can you hold it with your right hand? Mums and dads helping out. Beautiful job. Okay, Tiny Tots, I would like you to keep on waving for me. And I'm going to come and give some balls to some special helpers. If I give you a ball, can you hold on to it for me? Do not throw it. I wouldn't throw it at children, but here. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Okay, Tiny Tots. You have a ball in your hands. You are a fetcher. Who's got a puppy at home? Everyone has a puppy. I have cats too. Okay. As we all have puppies at home. Your puppy might run and get something. You're going to be our doggies today. So if this ball comes off the parachute, you're going to go collect it and throw it back up. And throw it onto the parachute. So if you are holding a ball, you are our Tiny Tot puppy today. If you are not holding a ball, you're going to have to try and shake the parachute as hard as you can to get the ball up. Okay, if you have a ball, throw it on. And shake, Tiny Tots. Shake, Tiny Tots. Listening, everybody. Okay, put your hands up if you can tell me how you tried to get the popcorn off the parachute. What did you do? What do you reckon? You shook it. Did you shake it side to side? We shook it up and down, didn't we? Who can tell me what else they might have done? Did we do little shakes? Did we do huge shakes? We did big ones. Fantastic. I love the way you had it go. Great joining in. Alright, can we pop the popcorn back onto the parachute? We're going to have one more go. I would like you to hold the parachute again with your right hand. Mums and dads, come join us. And I would like our puppies to pop the popcorn onto the parachute for me. Beautiful job. Well done. Very interesting. Okay, Tiny Tots, we are going to walk around in a circle together, taking the parachute with us, and we're going to shake
So that's kind of like a little reward at the end for them. Okay, well done everybody. If I can get our puppies to take the popcorn for us and to pop them in the bag. And with the Tiny Tots, I'd share the job around so I wouldn't have the same person doing it all the time, but you guys can do that for me. And can you please roll up your parachutes? I also all groups that would do it as a bit of a relay and we'd have a few more buckets as well. But just for today, if you guys can split yourselves in half, if we say people on this side, can you watch for the moment? Is that alright? And people on this side, can you get yourselves into 2 lines? One here, one over here. With the Tiny Tots, I'd have a cone. I'd say something like, these people, if I tap you on the head, can stand behind the red cone, and these people can stand behind the yellow cone. Make a bit of fun out of the colours as well. You're very welcome. Lovely manners, good respect. I already apologise. Okay, Tiny Tots, who loves playing with water? In summer we do like having an end of session water activity, especially if it is really hot. They do love it. Okay, Tiny Tots, so we are going to do a little bit of a relay and you have to work together as a team. You need to run with your cup along the side, fill up your cup, put your water in the bucket and run all the way back. Can I get the 2 special Tiny Tots at the front to do a demo for me? So Tiny Tots running up, fill up your cup, beautiful job, and pop it in the bucket, and from that, give your cup to the next person, and you will then go to the end of the line. Okay, Tiny Tots, we're going to start, and then I will stop in a minute. So Tiny Tots, are we ready? Set, go. Well done. You could always club your team. Let them know. Go grab them. Well done, everybody. Cheering, well done. Environmentally not great. Okay, Tiny Tots, when they get back, we're actually going to stop. Well done. Can we give them a clap? Oh, yeah. Very, very well. Okay, Tiny Tots, who can tell me what you think our aim of this game is? Is it autographs?
Fill up the bucket.
You reckon we might need to fill the bucket? So what do we need to do? Do you reckon you win if you've got lots of water or little water? If you've got lots of water, well done. Who can tell me whether when's the right time to run? When's the right time to walk? Yeah. What was that? Did you say you reckon you have to walk? Fantastic! Don't be scared. Not scary, Emma. So they said that when you've got a cup of water, it's best to walk. Okay, so Tiny Tots, sometimes you might want to do a little run, sometimes you might want to do a bit of a walk. For the moment, can I get the groups to stop over?
Chant, I'm best.
Again, well done. Great lifting, everybody. Okay, so we're just going to pretend that you did it before as well. So now we've had a chat about running or walking and that our aim is to fill up the bucket. We're going to have another go. Are we ready? Set, go.
Okay, Tiny Tots, can you stand on the edge of the red for me, please? Okay, for the moment, actually, can I get some mums and dads on these ones? Pretend mums and dads. Yeah, that's good. Has everyone got a mum or dad? Thank you very much. Okay, mums or dads, you're going to be our Tiny Tots markers. So wherever they jump, you're going to stand because they need to beat themselves. So mums or dads, get ready to get your shoes sandy. Okay, Tiny Tots, I would like you to jump as far as you can. Alright, show off. Okay, mums or dads, stand where they jump. Tiny Tots, hold that tongue with the red. And jump again for me.
Wait, what?
That was better. Well done, mums and dads. If they jump further, stand on their new spots. Alright, Tiny Tots. Now we've had a bit of a go. Who can remember from one of our other sessions how we want to jump and land? Who can tell me?
On our face.
Great try, but not today. 2 feet. We are going to land with 2 feet. Can you show me that? Just standing on the red for me. How are we going to land? Bent knees. Beautiful, bent knees. Excellent. Who's seen a motorbike before? Yeah, I reckon we've all seen a motorbike. Have you ever ridden one, Tiny Tots? Okay, so we're going to stand. Obviously, we don't need to do the hands, vroom vroom, but we're going to stand like we're riding a motorbike. How are we going to jump off? Are we going to jump like this too, do you reckon? Going to jump like this to that? Yes. Not a problem. You can have a go at that. You can tell me after how you went. Anyone else have an idea? With 1 foot. So Tiny Tots, I want you to have a go at jumping off 1 foot and landing like a motorbike. Are we ready? Set, go. Well done. Mums and dads, you know what to do. Tiny Tots, hop back. Practice. Ready and jump. Well done. You can make flat. Who can tell me why we need to jump into something like sand?
So you don't break your legs.
Yes, so we don't break our legs. Great answer. So you can see where you land. You've done this before.
Because I don't want to jump on the rock.
Soft. Oh, we wouldn't want to jump on a rock, would we? Yes, it's soft. Back to our previous point, well done. So we can see where you land. So mums and dads, have you been looking at where your Tiny Tot is landing in the sand? Yes, of course you have. Well done. Okay, then I would let them, we might say something like, okay, Tiny Tots, I know you've been dying to. Can you build yourself a sandcastle, or a sand crocodile, or a sand kangaroo, or a sand princess? A sand whatever you like, just at the beginning of the sand here. Off you go, Tiny Tots, build yourself a sand something. Princess, please. Or a fairy. I'm not too fussy. If it's the first time I've done this, usually I'll go there before and I'll build a heap and draw a smiley face on it. It can be a sand crocodile, something like that. Well done, Tiny Tots. We are going to use our jumping off 1 foot and landing like we're on a motorbike again.
To smash it to the ground.
No, bad. Stop it. But this time we're going to take a step back from me. Maybe come to this point now. Usually I have a point. And I would like you to run, Tiny Tots, until you get to the end of the red. And you're going to jump into the sand pit, but make sure your feet don't touch your special sand monster or fairy. Or animal. Very princess. Excellent. Okay, off you go. But to begin with, it probably doesn't matter too much. Okay, Tiny Tots, you can squish your sand things. And at the end of the session, I'll give them something tricky to practice. That's and a good favourite. And if they choose to go home and practice with mums and dads, might be throwing a ball with mums and dads. Something like that. Thanks, everyone.
But are both fantastic coaches or centre leaders, Tiny Tots leaders, all right? So, you know, we wanted you to see that contrast too, right? So that you start to think about, well, what's my style? How do I get this stuff across? What do I do? You know, and maybe, because each year when we run one of these, Russell usually turns up each year, so I've got to think of something new. So maybe next year we'll look at coaching styles and the different ways in which you can approach that, because that's quite interesting. And a colleague of mine in at Tennis Australia, he actually did his PhD in coaching and looked at the different coaching styles of tennis coaches, right? And how that maps against the different spectrum of teaching styles which we use in teaching. All right, just quickly, anybody have any questions or comments about what they saw Amy do in that session and what that was about? Any things that you want to ask Amy about? Not all at once.
Having been up to Golden Grove with our kids, it has been a joy and a revelation to me. She introduces a lot more music than I had ever done, and I've since brought some of that back to our club. We even had it at the Improvers because we had to sit around and wait for the track.
Yeah.
It wasn't our club, and there was nothing for the kids to do, and so we were doing that, and it keeps that flow going.
Yeah.
That was one of the great things I took from Amy when I was visiting up there.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Can I encourage you too that you maybe talk to Steve if you might want to go and visit some other centres, especially people that have been doing it for a little while, and Steve can facilitate that for you and give you contact details and that sort of thing, right? It's because teaching or coaching can be professionally isolating because you do it by yourself, just with a group of kids, and you don't get to see how other people do it. And what you said there, sometimes it's just a little thing like that, or reversing the order of a game, or you know, whatever it is, and you go, oh, why haven't I thought of that, right? Or the way that, you know, this one's so bubbly and keeps it bubbling along, and the positive reinforcement, the level of positive reinforcement for the kids, you know, like kid wouldn't dare drop out of her program because I'm not going to get all the positives, you know, on when do you do it? Sunday? Saturday
Morning.
Okay, Saturday morning. All right, let's have a look briefly at these. I think these are the essential components of a quality Tiny Tots program, right? So first of all, the activities that you select, right, you don't have to stick to what's in the book, right? That's there as a starting point. That's there to help you initially. But if you find that they don't match the physical, the social, the cognitive, the emotional development of the kids, change it. Make it simpler, make it easier, make it more challenging, right? Depends on your group.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, of course.
Occasionally we've tried things out there or elsewhere that we thought would work, and you start doing it and you suddenly realise this just is not working.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you can adjust it.
Yep.
And sometimes it's a matter of saying, let's put that one aside. We may come back to it in a week or two in a different way.
Yeah.
So you've got to be willing to do that.
I think one of the things too to think about is what are the variations to this game that I can possibly do? So before you play the game, you're already thinking, how can I make this easier? How can I make it more challenging? Right? And you need to be ready for that beforehand. And also, how can the questions that I ask of the children actually prompt them to focus on what I want them to learn? And how can it extend them, or how can it make that more visible in their learning? All right? Second thing, the activities that you select aren't based on what you're good at. They're what the kids need. So don't base the activities on what you're good at. So like, I'm an expert on sprinting, so we're going to do all sprinting for 11 to 20 weeks, right? No, that won't work, right? Sounds silly, but sometimes we get stuck in what we know. So a good program is based on the needs of the kids, not what you're good at. And you're going to have to get good at some things that you're not good at the moment, especially if it's your first time. Try to make it a success and strengths-based program. So emphasise what kids are good at and then build on from your strengths. Even as adults, we don't want to be told all the time that we're no good at something or that, we're not good at something. Schools are really good at working on what kids aren't good at, right? They call it diagnostic testing, right? They find out what kids aren't good at, and then what do? Give them lots of it to make them better. That's wrong. I think we should work out, what are you good at? What are the kids good at? And then build on from that. Doesn't mean we stay just with that, but we start with what they're good at, and I call that a strengths-based approach. So start with what they're good at doing. Recognise what they're good at doing. That's what Amy did a lot in that session. Lots of that positive reinforcement. Oh, you're really good at that, right? The kids say, am I? I've never noticed, right? Okay. And even though you were in the role of a kid, who in that session got a positive and you can't help yourself? Okay, all right, okay. So that positive reinforcement, basing it on their strengths. Find out what your kids are good at, not just what they need help with, right? Offer a positive set of behaviours that kids need to reach. So that's this stuff again, right? Are you respectful? Are you putting in an effort, right? Like, have you ever heard Rafa talk about respect? I think it's really instructive, right? As a tennis player, an elite tennis player, he says, if I don't respect my opponent, then they will beat me. And respect comes back to my preparation. I need to be properly prepared. I need to have all my drink bottles ready. I need to be ready to play. And if I don't respect my opponent, then I'm not going to win. I think that's a totally different way of looking at respect, isn't it? So you need to talk to kids about that stuff and share that stuff with them. The games and activities that you do, of course, form the core of the program. So their selection, you need to really think about. Don't just follow the course in the program, right? If you need to change it up, change it up. If your kids aren't ready for that stuff, go and search in the other online manual for other games and activities. We've talked about this today when we talked about values, but there are a whole range of social skills like cooperation, taking responsibility, and their character development that you start to work on. I'd make these points to you. I think kids need to learn to cooperate before they learn to compete. Because you think about competition, you cannot have a fair competition unless you know how to cooperate with your opposition. Right? So, I put cooperation before competition. Character, the development of the little characters that you have precedes any technical skill development. And kids learn by watching you and listening to you. You are a role model. Bad luck. Everything that you say is up there in importance. Amy said this to me, right? And 15 minutes afterwards, they're still thinking about it. Why? Because she's important, right? Mum, dad, teacher at school, and then you. You're number 4 in the most important person in their life. Ouch. That's a worry, isn't it? Number 4. mum and dad, their teacher at school, and then it's you. So what you say, what you do speaks volumes to them, right? About diversity. How do you handle those complex diversity issues in the group? You get a kid with a disability roll up, the way you respond to that, the way you include that kid, the other kids are watching. They just drink it in. They won't necessarily say a lot, but what you do and what you say, right, will really affect the way they think. All right, I want to show you a video now. Okay, this is my grandson. I'll be up front, right? Okay, so you got to. I'm sorry, you got to watch a 2-year-old. But what I want you to watch is what his mother says, my daughter says, right, to Charlie in the whole time, and whether she's there ready to catch him or not, and how does Charlie solve the problems of this? So this is really about problem solving. He'd never been on this before. That's not going to work.
Oh, good boy, Charlie.
Okay. So that's the problem. That's an example of problem solving, isn't it? He had to solve, how does he get from the ground up to where he wanted to be so he could go on the slippery bit, right? Because that was the aim, right? So that's what all those games do for kids. They set them problems that they need to solve. Telling kids the answers the whole time, you know, like, oh, if you just do it this way and like that, I don't think helps kids to remember. You know yourself, when you solve a problem yourself, you go, yes. And when it's really annoyed you, I reckon it's got what I'd call a stickiness to it. It sticks in your memory. You don't forget it. So you need, that's where the questions are better, rather than telling them. Now, I'm a teacher. I got to stop myself from doing it all the time, because us teachers are really good at telling kids what to do, right? The best of us, though, don't tell. We now just ask a question, and we get the kid to solve the problem, just like Charlie did there. So, I got caught. The kid caught me, right? When mum or dad catches them, eventually, because they don't try to catch them straight off, the kid goes, oh, that's all right, because it's mum or dad, right? So we're introducing them to that level when they're ready. Ensure, though, that the parent's focus is on their child's skill mastery and cooperation. So they're trying to get better at running, they're trying to get better at throwing, they're trying to get better at jumping, right? And then, how can they cooperate? We need a success-based program, right? Every session, kids have to succeed at least one thing every session. And more importantly, they need to perceive that they've succeeded, whether they have or not. As long as they perceive that they're successful, they will be better off. They'll want to return. Who would want to come to a session if you're no good at anything? I'm not going to that again. I'm no good. As an adult, you haven't got that resilience. Why would we expect kids to have that resilience? Yet we do. Butter up. Go again. Oh, you're not good at it, but you will be one day. One day? That's forever for a little tacker. Okay? So we need to think about that success-based program. starting from their strengths. All right? There are parents participating with their kids, right? And that's what parents want to do. They're quality interactions where they're doing something else together. That's the fun part. So that's why we've got the parent information sheets, and we're suggesting that you give them to them either on enrolment and you talk to them, or at the first session, right? It tells them about the purpose of the program, why it's important for their child to participate, why they should be involved in the program as an active participant as a parent, and how they can get involved as a parent. Okay? So, a copy of the information sheet is provided with each resource, and you can also access it off the resources page on the Little Athletics website. Okay? So if you lose your piece of paper, you can download another one. All right? It's a play-based approach, so keep it active and fun. The parental involvement is really vital here to make it live for kids, make it reasonable for kids, make them able to participate. Try to use questions to prompt children and their parents to think about the solution, because sometimes not only do the kids not know, but the parents don't know, right? And so it's good learning for the parents. Vary the activities if they aren't working, or cut them out totally, just so that that's not working, right? Be flexible in the way you implement the program. Have confidence in your own abilities. That's really important too, all right? And remember, build relationships with the parents and the children. Enjoy watching the kids improve and succeed, right? And I reckon that's one of the real buzzes you get when you see a kid do something that they couldn't do before. You go, yeah, I had a part of that. Keep the president and the committee up to date with what you're doing. Don't just come and do your job, do an excellent job and then pack it up and go home. Talk to people, right? Feedback from parents and children has constantly emphasised the importance of the Tiny Tots Coordinators to the success of this program. The most successful programs have great coordinators, right? So your excellence there is really